So hey everybody, it's Saturday and we're just 2 weeks away from Easter. We finish up in John chapter 15 today. Hopefully you've already read the text, and I just want to mention the context of John chapter 15. Remember that as we read these sections, they're building off what we read the day before. Understanding what is being said cannot be separated from the context around it. So today, what John is still capturing Jesus in his final teachings, in his final hours, on his last night of freedom with his disciples. What he started with in John 15 after they've left the upper room is still consistent with what he's talking about now. He's talking about abiding in him, right? He says abide, 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 or remain, 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 remain. Says it like 4 or 5 times. Remain in me, you can bear much fruit. So we have this sense from Jesus that his goal is for us to nurture a relationship with him and to be bearing fruit, a fruit that we don't produce because we're a branch, but us being connected to the vine produces in us. And then in this next section, one of the things he talks about is as we bear fruit that reflects Jesus, because there's an enemy in this world and a ruler of this world that is not in support of Jesus, we're going to be in the crosshairs. Now, the early church knew this. Jesus is speaking firstly to those disciples that are with him that night, and he's warning them of the persecution that's coming. They hated me. They're going to arrest me. They're going to crucify me, and then they're going to fix their eyes on you. Because in the next couple chapters, one of the things Jesus is going to say is, I'm leaving, and it's good that I go, because if I go, then really I'm not confined to one body, one place, one location. The Holy Spirit will be sent. I'll send the Comforter, and you'll all be able to do even greater things than I've done. So this indwelling of the Holy Spirit, the incarnation of Jesus is Christ, God in the flesh. When he returns to the Father, then we're going to have the gift of his Spirit in us. We're the temple of God. And when we live in, and that's the other thing too, he said in the first part of 15, obedience. If you love me, obey my commands. So our obedience to Jesus produces fruit that will put us in the crosshairs of the enemy. And those who are influenced by the enemy of God in this world will often put us in their crosshairs as well. And that means that sometimes we feel attacked or maligned or ostracized or made fun of or teased or rebuked by people that we might know as followers of Jesus. But I think in this too, we have to recognize Jesus is talking about the primary audience that was opposed to him were the religious. They were the ones claiming to speak for the law, and yet behind the scenes they were breaking it for the sake of their own control, for their own desires. And in that is a strong warning to us as followers of Jesus, to make sure that we toe that line, that even though we follow Christ and we want to be faithful to him and obedient to him, we have to make sure that we're doing it his way, that we're living this life his way, not the way we like, not producing what it is that we want for ourselves, not building an alliance with this world. And that's what the religious leaders at that time were doing. They were building alliance with the Romans to take Jesus out, and they were doing it with the justification that it was for their religious faith, when in reality it was for their own intentions, their own desires. They hadn't really consulted with what God wanted. Only a few, like Nicodemus, were consciously asking that question and pulling Jesus aside to grasp that. So I know I've shared a lot of different context around John chapter 15, but I think one of the things we have to be careful of that we even see right now in our culture is this idea that just because we're Christian, just because we follow Jesus, that we stand apart from the rest of the world and they have their eyes locked on us. And the truth is we've got to be careful that we don't push people away from Christ. So often throughout history, as Christians, we have tried to force or influence people who are non-Christian to live Christian lives. And we don't see Jesus doing that. He invites people to follow him. He doesn't force them. He invites them. And he even here says that once he showed up to that audience, those that heard, they had no excuse for their sin now because God was present. There's a lot of people in our world today that don't know who God is, that have not heard Jesus speak. And they can want nothing to do with Jesus based on their interaction with Christians. Because if Jesus looks anything like them, judgmental, hostile, aggressive, not willing to listen, not loving, right? Like that's what he says here. We're to be known by love, by the way we love others. So we just have to toe that line carefully to remember that, okay, we're going to follow Jesus, but we're to be a people. I mean, that's how the church exploded in the first 3 centuries. They were a people that invited anybody to come, no matter their baggage, and to bring it to the cross. And they weren't rejected in their lostness, their brokenness, the darkness, the confusion they were living in. They didn't applaud the morals of the world. They stood in their own place against that in obedience to Jesus, but didn't push people away from the cross either. Lived lovingly in a way that drew people to the cross. So maybe you feel that pressure of walking with Christ and maybe being the one that's being ridiculed or maligned because of it. Make sure you keep that line clear, that you're still loving people. You're not judging them because they're hostile to you, but you're still allowing Jesus to use you to love them. You're still bearing fruit that reflects Jesus in a way that draws others to him. And people aren't drawn to Christ because of their guilt for their sin. They're drawn to Christ because of his love and his mercy. And when they get close to him and they listen, just like you and me, we see our sin. We see that we don't measure up. And then we find out that he's willing to forgive us. And that's why we open our hands and we welcome what he has to offer. So, hey, enjoy your weekend. Sorry this video was a little bit long, but there's just so much here that needs unpacked to really grasp how this fits in the first part of 15 and in what's to come over the next few days in chapter 16. Look forward to seeing you tomorrow morning as we get to hear from Kiwi and focus in on Compassion International.